Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Kernersville Board of Aldermen. Today is Wednesday, April 27th, and we're glad you can join us here today. We'll begin this evening with a roll call attendance. Alderman John Barrow, present. Mayor Pro Tem Bill Apple, present. Alderman J.R. Gorham, present. Thank you. Alderman Joe Penix,
present.
Thank you. Alderman Chris Thompson,
present. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We'd like to welcome Pastor Jeff Barnes from Friends Church of Kernersville to lead our invocation tonight.
Let's pray. Father God, we are certainly grateful. I come to you thankful today for those who serve our communities. I pray a special prayer and lift up thanks for our fire department, our police department, our aldermen, our mayor, or others who serve our community and the staff. I thank you for those who have come tonight to join and participate in this process. Lord, we pray humbly and we ask you for peace and wisdom to fill this room and everything that's done. And we pray that everything that is done will help us to love you more and to love others as well. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Thank you, Pastor Barnes. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. We have some ceremonial items on the agenda tonight, and also we have a public session. If you'd like to speak on the public session, there's speaker cards at the back of the room, and you would hand them to our town manager, Kurt Swisher, who's sitting at this front table here. Okay, our first presentation is a presentation of a proclamation for Municipal Clerks Week. Then we will do a presentation of a proclamation for Law Enforcement Officers Week and a presentation of a proclamation for Public Services Week. So it's my honor as mayor and on behalf of the Board of Aldermen to recognize Keith Hooker, who's our town clerk, for Municipal Clerks Week. The town clerk is an important position. They keep the records for the town. They notice the meetings. They do a lot of the things that make our government run smoothly. And so sometimes they remove the Post-its on the front of the proclamation, but I'll do this one for you, Keith. So anyway, I'd like to present this to Keith Hooker in appreciation of Municipal Clerks Week and a small gift of our appreciation. I'm sure the board would like to shake your hand. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This month, we'll also be recognizing Beth Price, who's our deputy clerk. Also, as mayor, I'd like to recognize Law Enforcement Officers Week. It will be the week of May 11th through May 17th. It's a week that's been designated by Congress and the President, and it recognizes the members of the law enforcement agencies of North Carolina and how they play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the citizens of the state. It's important that all citizens know and understand the problems, duties, and responsibilities of their law enforcement officers and agencies, and that the members of those agencies recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence and disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deceptive and the weak against oppression or intimidation. The town of Kernersville and the citizens recognize and appreciate the contribution made by law enforcement officers in all levels of government, and so I'd like to present Chief Summers a proclamation declaring May 11th through 17th as Law Enforcement Officers Week in the town of Kernersville. Thank you. Appreciate your service. Next is Public Services Week. Which, if you may not be aware, is one of the town's largest departments. It's an integral part of our daily lives, and the services provided by this department are critical to addressing the needs of a growing community. In fact, Doran is the director of that department, Doran Maltba, and when he took that position, he recommended that we change the name for Kernersville from Public Works to Public Services, recognizing the wide range of services it provides for the citizens. So we're celebrating this in conjunction with the national celebration of Public Works Week. But our Public Services Department encompasses many disciplines, delivering a wide range of services, including roadway construction and maintenance, residential and commercial sanitation services, recycling, fleet maintenance, facilities maintenance, and stormwater management services. We plan for the ice storms, we respond to the emergencies, we help get the roads clear, and this department repairs equipment for many of the other departments. Whereas the quality and effectiveness of these services and operations are dependent upon the training, skill, dedication, and efforts of our employees in that department, and the health, safety, and economic vitality of the community depends greatly on these services. Whereas the support and understanding of an informed citizenry is vital to the effective delivery of these services and operations, I, Dawn Morgan, as mayor, and on behalf of the Board of Aldermen, do hereby proclaim the week of May 15th to 21st as Public Services Week in the town of Kernersville. Thank you, and thank you to your department. It's a great honor to join with communities across the United States celebrating these observances, and we appreciate all of our employees and what they do to keep the town of Kernersville running smoothly throughout the year. So we'll begin this evening with our public session. We'll begin with speakers from the floor. This is an opportunity to address the board on an item that is not otherwise covered on the agenda. If you'd like to be a speaker from the floor, if you haven't handed in a speaker card, you can simply come up to the podium. Okay, seeing none, we'll go on to the public session. Public session items allow for 15 minutes of comment. The first is a presentation by the Kernersville Auto Museum. I'd like to recognize Jim Taylor.
Good evening, everyone. My name is, Jim Taylor, and I reside at 726 Bluff School Road here in Kernersville. Thank you so much for this privilege and opportunity to speak to you a few moments this evening regarding our new auto museum, the next tourist attraction for the great city of Kernersville, which we all are very excited about. Some of you do not know me that well, so I thought it might be appropriate just to do a brief introduction. My family moved to the Kernersville area when I was 4 years old to Hopkins Road. I grew up on a small tobacco farm, which is now known as Timber Trails Subdivision. And I have lived here in the Kernersville area my entire life. After retiring from Piedmont Aviation, which is a parent company of Piedmont Airlines, in year 2000, I began to get involved quite heavily with a lot of the nonprofits here in the Kernersville area. One of the first things that I was involved with was helping create the Kernersville Foundation. I served with our good friend Arnold King for 15 years on the Economic Development Ncdot Committee. I served as president of the museum for 3 years. And I have supported financially and other ways the nonprofits here for about 20 years. I helped establish the local Kernersville Cruise-In that we have now on the second Saturday of every month, and we did that in 2009. Well, enough about me. Let's talk a little bit about the museum. About 4 years ago, I decided I really needed to do something to establish a museum. And for the next 2 years, I tried very, very hard to find a facility that would accommodate what I was wanting to do. But unfortunately, I was not able to find a building, so I did it the hard way. I started looking for some property to build a building, and the good fortune was that I found property on Old Western Road, which was an ideal location. And in the 1st of October, I believe in 2020, I placed this property under contract, and then came to you folks to assist me in helping me get it rezoned. And thank you so kindly for your efforts in helping me do that. I started construction on the building that that we're talking about in June of last year, and we finished it around February of this year, which was quite a Herculean effort in view of the fact that we were having a lot of difficulty getting materials. But thanks to the inspection department, the planning department here in Kernersville, who worked with me so well and was very patient with me, because this was one of those do-it-yourself jobs, I was able to accomplish it in about 6 months. The museum was incorporated in March of this year as a nonprofit institution, and we received our 501c3 status 30 days later, which I understand is almost unheard of in this day and time. Presently, we have 17 vehicles in the museum on display, and we hope many more to come soon. The building is approximately 11,000 square feet, and I'm hoping it will house approximately 50 automobiles. And we plan to start opening the facility on May the 6th, next Friday, on a limited schedule from 4 to 6. And it will be open 2 days a week, Friday and Saturday, from 10 to 4, from 10 to 4. The allergies are getting to me, so y'all excuse me for that. Our vision for the museum is to preserve the history of the vintage and antique cars and to display them for the general public viewing. We hope we can educate and inspire a lot of young people with the history of these vehicles and what an important role they played in the development of our nation. Many of our young people have never had any exposure to these cars. I can also envision many of the schools taking advantage of coming to the museum and visiting with us on field trip days and things such as that. A couple of weeks ago, we had, many of you know about the Touch a Truck that the Kiwanis Club put together out at Diritachi. And I was there with one of the Model Ts that we have in the museum. And I was told we had 5,000 people, but I think there was about 6 that came through the Model T. I just about wore the hinges off of the door, letting them in and out. But if they could get to that steering wheel and steer it a little bit and work the choke and the levers and get their picture made by their grandmother or the grandfather or their mother or dad, they were happy. They were smiling. So it thrilled me to be able to do that. We also hope to bring back a lot of memories to our seniors. Just this past week, I had the pleasure and opportunity to bring a good friend of mine who just celebrated his 100th birthday into the museum. And I wish you could have seen his face light up when he looked at all those cars, and especially the 1921 Model T depot hack. He was thrilled to see it. And he was acquainted with all of them. He really was. Additionally, we hope this facility will be a venue for displaying family cars in honor of loved ones that are living and along with those that have passed away. I trust these comments will give you a little better insight as to what we're trying to accomplish there at the museum. As I think most of you know, we're having a ribbon cutting tomorrow at 11 a.m. and would be honored to have you in our presence. But if you're unable to come tomorrow, please give me a call anytime, and I will be more than happy to meet you there and give you a tour so you can learn more about what we're trying to do there. If I could answer any questions from any of you at this time, I'd be happy to.
Are there any questions?
Jim, let me ask, will you be conducting some activities in conjunction with some of the classic car groups that do downtown displays as well? Would you be conducting some activities in connection?
I'm sorry, Bill. My hearing is not that great.
Mine not either. So between the two of us, we'll miss it. No, I was just wondering whether you were going to anticipate being engaged in any activities jointly with the classic car groups that display downtown here.
Oh, yes. I'm involved very heavily and have been for 20 years with the Old Salem ACA chapter. We have almost 100 members in that chapter, and they'll be supporting the museum in a very, very big way. I might add this. We will be, in order to receive some income and revenue, we'll be charging $250 per month for storing and displaying an automobile. In addition to that, we hope to have quite a few benefits there, charity benefits and such like, and hope to receive some grants along the way. So that's how we plan to keep it going. We have a beautiful facility. It's paid for, but we need just a little kickstart to get it moving. And again, thank you so kindly for your time.
Thank you. All right, the next agenda item is a discussion regarding the proposed relocation of fireworks display for July 4th.
Madam Mayor and Board, as you know, there has been a lot of discussion recently regarding the proposed relocation of the fireworks. And so I have a short presentation on that with more facts than conjecture, I guess. So I think it skipped a slide. No, okay. So the reasons for the relocation are the visibility of the fireworks. I'll cover each of these a little bit later on. The fallout zone that is necessary to accommodate larger shells, the traffic flow, and parking. Those are or the main reasons for the proposed relocation is currently, all of you are probably aware, is currently we launched the fireworks from the field behind Station 41, right next to Civitan Park. We're proposing to relocate them to Ivy Redmond. So there's been a lot of things, I guess, said on Facebook and other social media sites, and you all have gotten a lot of emails. I've gotten a lot of questions about it, everything else. So, you know, I've got some things here that I'll clear up before we really get into the facts of the matter. First of all, the proximity of the fire station or proximity to Station 41 has no bearing on where the fireworks are launched. They're not launched from Station 41 because it's the fire department there. Our fire trucks are mobile. We can move them. We would move a fire truck to Ivy Redmond. There is a fire hydrant within 750 feet of the proposed location there at Ivy Redmond. The one at Station 41 is about 450 to 500 feet from the launch site. So not much difference, but we would have a station engine company there at Ivy Redmond in case of a fire. We currently have fireworks at Ivy Redmond. At one of the cross-country meets, the town does not do them. The host of the meet does the fireworks. Same thing, we have someone have engine 42 come in and station there. Also, it has nothing to do with the water tower. There's a water tower there. We don't own the water tower. We're not going to tap into it and put out a fire. We'll simply use the fire hydrant and the fire hose. The location at Civitan, it is higher than the location at Ivy Redmond. It's not much higher. It's 1,020 feet at Civitan. Where they're launched from, it's about 960 feet at Ivy. So you're on two different sides of town. The location at Ivy is probably the highest area right in that area. So there's not much difference there. A lot of talk about setting the trees on fire. The concern with the trees is not setting the trees on fire. The concern is we have to clear the canopy of trees with the fireworks so that you can see them. To clear that canopy, the trees continue to grow. We have to use larger shells. And as you'll see a little bit later on, we're restricted in the size of shell that we can use at Civitan. So yes, we're concerned about setting the trees on fire, but that was not the point behind clearing the trees. Ivy Redmond, the majority of parking will not be inside the park at Ivy Redmond. It will, in fact, as you'll see a little bit later, be on the outside of the park at Ivy Redmond. And the last one, you know, I'm not delusional, as some folks seem to think I am, and I have been to Ivy, contrary to what some folks think. I don't have to punch it in my GPS to get there. I know where it's at. It can accommodate up to about 5,000 cars and somewhere between 10 and 12,000 people. We've done that at one or two events there. The last event we had was Friday Night Lights. It was a large cross-country event. I think Mayor Pro Tem Apple was there. Alderman Penix has been. We have about 8 to 12,000 people in the park at one time, and we have about 3,500 cars. We have the cars cleared out of there in about 20 minutes. I'll discuss that a little bit later on, the traffic flow that we'll use. So we know it can work. We've seen it work. And, you know, the folks, I think that we're discussing it on Facebook and whatnot probably have not been there to see it work. So we know it will work, and we will do that. So there's been a lot of talk about folks watching the fireworks from their house. This is a map of the area where folks can view it from their house or where they can walk to the school at the current location there at Civitan Park. It basically encompasses Branchwood, Oakhurst, all the way to Cherry Street, Fall Street, Baxter Street, Lake Drive, Gordon. The far southwest portion there is down at the new Kernersville Lake, or not the new Kernersville Lake, but down to Old Kernersville Lake, right around Matt Drive. It's about a mile from there to the schoolhouse. Those folks can't see all of the fireworks. So I don't know that they can watch it from their house. I don't know that all of them would walk a mile to get to the school to see them. The other area where the star is, that's where the fireworks are launched from. The area to the east of that encompasses a little bit of North Main, picks up Burke Street, Adams, Holt, Millis, Green, Bass Street, Sam Street, all in there. We also pick up Vernon Street, Nelson, those areas. So you've got 1,054 homes that can possibly see it from their house, or they can walk. If they choose to walk, they can probably walk to the school. Don't know that they all would, but that's a possibility. When you go west as far as the YMCA, you can't see it. You can't see the fireworks. You can't see them from the Y. You can see some of them, but not all of them. You get north on the north end of town as far as the sheets. I talked to an individual today. They can see the very end of it, but not the beginning. So the problem is we're shooting off 3-inch and 4-inch and 5-inch shells that you'll see in a minute, and you can't see all of them. So the visibility of the fireworks and the fallout zone, the tree growth in the past 3 years has made it nearly impossible for most of the folks to see the 3-inch shells, and not all of the 4-inch shells can be seen. The larger shells would have to be used so that they can clear the tree canopy for enough of the spectators to see them, but we're restricted on the size of the shell that the vendor will shoot. And as I mentioned there, the current location, the vendor will not launch anything larger than a 5-inch shell. And then folks talked about last year's fireworks show. Last year's show was great. It's not really indicative of the show we will have every year. Last year, the vendor basically gave us double the show for the same price, which meant we had more 5-inch shells. The reason the vendor did that is they had some shows canceled at the last minute. They had still some fireworks left from the previous year. You put them all in one, we got about a 45-minute show as opposed to about a 20-minute show. So we had double the 5-inch shells that we normally have, which made the show it was. It was great. I was there. It's the best one we had. Some of you might remember about 5 or 6 years ago, the show was not all that great. Probably 7 years ago, it was not all that great. We had a lot of complaints about it. The reason being was the vendor at the time would not use 5-inch shells. They would only use 3-inch and 4-inch. The folks at the Raiders field, as you'll see in a minute, cannot see most of the 3-inch shells. There's a chart right there that shows that. The yellow line is 3-inch, blue line's 4-inch, and the red line's 5-inch. From the launch site is the axis over on the left. It's 1,170 feet to the Raider field where they watch them. From where they normally sit at the Raider field to the tree, there's some trees along through there that's about 80 foot tall. It's about 210 feet. That chart is to scale as far as about 42 inches or 42 feet equal an inch. So everything is to scale. You can see right there, the 3-inch, the yellow line is running right through the middle of the tree. The blue line, depending on the amount of charge, they might be able to see it. They may not. And the 5-inch, of course, you can see. So the vendor a couple years ago used 3 and 4. The vendor after him came in, he used some 5s. The vendor we have right now will use 5s. But the vendor we have right now was telling us, you know, it's getting to the point to where they can't see the 5s. You need to go with a bigger shell, but we can't do a bigger shell here. So that's where we're at, basically. The fallout zone is hard to see. The inner circle, the blue one, if I can get it to light up right here, that's the fallout zone for 350 feet. So as you can see, it picks up the fire station, comes around, it's right through here. The 5-inch shells is the next line. It comes all the way down through here. And that is that's the fallout zone. The first one is the 5-inch, and then that's the 6-inch. This is the 8-inch, which comes all through here. So as you can see, the 5-inch shell that we use, the fallout zone picks up the fire station, picks up a big portion of the graveyard, picks up most of Bodenhammer Street, most of Nelson Street. That is assuming that we have no wind. The fallout from those shells has landed already. It landed over at the Raider Field. It's landed on the other side of Hitchcock Lumber. It's landed as far as Church Street when you go down Bodenhammer. So that's why they will not use anything any larger than what they're using. You can probably see on here, they're launched from right in here. So with all that in mind, that's why that we've proposed to relocate them. The traffic flow and parking at Civitan, there is no parking at Civitan. You don't get that close. Current location, we close off 7 to 8 roads for the event. We close off Bodenhammer from Cherry Street to the traffic circle. We close off Nelson Street, close off Church Street, Orr Street, School Street, and New Street. So we close off 7 or 8 streets. We've got 20 to 22 officers out working the event for a period of about 2 to 3 hours. Traffic at the end is funneled on the Mountain Street, Bodenhammer Street, Cherry Street, and Main Street. And I've seen it take as long as an hour to an hour and a half to get the traffic clear. And so to avoid that, folks park all around town. And that's where we're running into a problem as far as visibility goes. The further out they park, at this point, the less of the fireworks show they can see. So unless you're one of those folks that live in those 1,054 homes, or you drive and get there about 5:30 and get close enough, you're not going to see the entire show. You will not most likely see the 3-inch shells. You'll see most of the 4, maybe, depending on where you are, and you'll see most of the 5. So, and then you still got the traffic flow to deal with. I've sat in it. I'm sure you all have sat in it. I mean, you think you've gone somewhere once you get to Main Street, and it's backed up from Mountain Street all the way down to Hardee's, and it's just bumper to bumper. Here's a map of the current road closures. Everything in yellow is closed. All of these streets in here is closed. This is Bodenhammer Street. This, of course, is a cemetery. Everything right in there is closed. There's no access in there. If you live in there, of course, you can get in there, but otherwise you can't get. And we close them at what, 6 o'clock? We start closing them down about 6 or 6:30. So they're closed until 9:30. So not just for the folks going to the fireworks show, the folks trying to travel down Mountain Street, Bodenhammer Street, Cherry Street, and Main Street during that time when it's closed, those streets are closed, they're also backed up. So, I mean, it's a lot of closures. We can work with it. We can get around it. But the other location that we're proposing, you won't have that much of an issue with it. So where are we proposing? We're proposing to move it to Ivy Redmond Park. Right here is the baseball or the softball fields, baseball fields. This is the first field that you see going down Beeson Road on the right. And we would set the fireworks off over to the right there where it says fireworks. We'll have folks, I think we've got another slide, as you can see. I believe my clicker might be running out. Can you move it? There we go. We will have a music. We'll have music. The music stage will be set up in the parking lot of the baseball fields. We'll have food trucks set up there. Spectators, they'll be allowed to sit in the parking lot. They can sit in the softball fields, any of those locations, and they will be able to, of course, see the fireworks. You see there's seating for the fireworks will be available across all of the softball fields. We have 3 softball fields. They can sit in the field across the street that you see up there on the right. We will most likely park cars there in the grass field over to the right. The handicap parking will be in the gravel lot there that you see where it says fireworks. That will be where the handicap parking is. We'll use the other field there as well. So you'll have seating all around the fireworks. No, nothing there to obstruct anyone's view. Here's a map that shows the areas that can view the fireworks from their home or walk to Ivy. You can see it picks up Salisbury Crossing, picks up Fieldcrest, Hearthstone, down off of Old Cabin Lane, Sherrill Drive, Amy Lee Trail, of course, Tredegar's, part of Century Park. I don't know that they could see it, but they could walk up to the church. I will say that it'll be a little tougher to walk to Ivy Redmond Park. Most folks aren't going to walk down Union Cross Road. So they will, those folks, but those homes should be able to see it from their house or to walk within a short distance of where there will be visibility. So you're looking at a difference of about 500 homes that can see it at the current location or walk to a location, about a difference of 500 homes there. So we have a visibility of the fireworks in the fallout zone at Ivy. At Ivy, we would propose to use all 5-inch shells. They will go somewhere in the neighborhood of about 450 feet. 8-inch shell is going to go about 700 feet. So we could use 5-inch shells and larger. So it would be 450 to 700 foot high. Your 3-inch shell is going roughly about 250 feet. Fireworks will be easily visible from any of the fields in the park, the field where parking will occur, and several locations in the industrial park, and most likely several locations on Highway 66. And the fallout zone for any size shell is not an issue at Ivy Redmond. The only thing in the fallout zone is trees, that you'll see on the next slide. Those areas there, the little triangle areas, represent where the fallout zones are. The furthest one goes out into the trees there to the north. So nothing gets over into the houses at Tredegar, nothing gets into the houses on Beeson Road, nothing gets back into the houses on Fieldcrest. So we're clear in the fallout zone all the way around. Again, all we have to worry about is the trees. The fire truck would be stationed down at the gravel parking lot right near where the fireworks will be launched from. So traffic flow and parking at Ivy, this is one that has generated some discussion. Traffic will flow into Ivy on Shield Road, of course, from either Highway 66 or Union Cross Road and Shield Road. They would come in that way. They would turn on off of Union Cross or off of Highway 66 on the Shields. They would come up and they would be directed into the field that I'll show you in a minute. Traffic will exit the field. Part of the cars will go to Highway 66 and part will go to Union Cross Road. If they're directed out to Highway 66, some of them may choose to turn down Bridgeport and go through the business park. Some of them may go on to Highway 66. We'll have an officer at the intersections getting them through the light. So it's a matter of just getting them on the road, get them on Shield Road and flag them out. The 1,000 cars that's parked in Ivy Redmond, they'll come out and they'll be instructed to go to the right. So they'll go out to Highway 66. Once those folks are out, we'll let them go both ways coming out of the park. As I mentioned earlier, traffic flow will be similar to the plan that we utilize for Friday Night Lights cross-country meet and state cross-country meet. Friday Night Lights is on a Friday, obviously. It starts at about 5:30, ends at about 10:30. The road is not closed. Shields Road is not closed, so we get that many folks in and out without closing Shields Road. We would propose to close Shields Road for this event, which will make it a lot easier. The only folks coming on the Shields Road will be the people that's there for the fireworks, so we can get them in and out a lot easier. Got the next map there, shows the traffic flow or the parking at Ivy. The top field, not the one in green, but the one above that. That is the main field. It's located on Shield Road. If you're going down Shield Road off Union Cross, it is a big field on the left. It's 1,970 feet long by 660 feet wide. And then we'll use the small field down there along the green as well for parking. It holds less cars, but we'll use it. So to let everyone know that, yes, we can get that many cars in the field. We went out and measured it. The next slide shows you how that works. We can park approximately 4,009 cars in the larger field. It's 8.5 foot wide parking space, each space 8 foot deep, 20 feet between the rows. So you can get 230 cars on a row and 17.3 rows. gives you 4,009 vehicles. Same calculations with the park down at the dog lot. We can get 1,041 cars there for basically 5,050 cars. That is not using any of the property that the town is in the process of purchasing. If we've got more cars than that, most likely they would park down in the business park. We don't anticipate many more cars than that. If you've got 10,000 to 12,000 people, which is about what we anticipate watches the event, I don't think you'll have much more than 5,000 cars there. It's kind of hard to park 5,000 cars around town when you go around town during their fireworks and see where they're at. There's not that many lots with that many cars in it. I mean, you got to have a lot of lots with a lot of cars. So we can get it in, we can get them out to make that work. So we are proposing to relocate it to Ivory Redmond Park. That's the reasons behind it. I realize there is a lot of tradition where it's at. But the tradition and the folks that have most folks that are not wanting it to be moved, you know, if you go on Facebook and take a poll on Facebook and see the folks that have commented, along with the folks that have emailed you all and called you all, probably 90% of those folks are one of the 1,000 folks that watch it, or one of the 1,000 homes that can see it from their house. So if you've got 12,000 people that watch it, you know, you're looking at about 20% of the total folks that watch it that are right in that area. Has it traditionally been held there? Yes, it has. I'm not going to argue with the tradition. That's one fact that I can't argue with. It's what I'm telling you is that sooner or later, that tradition, and it's going to be sooner rather than later, that tradition is going to end where it's currently at. Whether it's by choice or just by necessity, it's going to end because nobody's going to be able to see them. And we can't go any larger shells. And you can't push but so many people down to the schoolhouse, because then you can't get the folks in and out. So as the people get closer so that they can see more of the show, you just can't get them in and out. And moving it to Ivy Redmond, it opens it up. It allows for everybody to see it. It allows for the food trucks. It allows for the music. Everything else is just overall a better venue. Now, is it the tradition? No. I can't sit here and argue that, because it's certainly not. I can tell you, they've been over to the schoolhouse as long as I've been a kid and been going to them. Personally, I live closer to the schoolhouse than I do Ivy Redmond. But I'm one of those that drive. 80% of the people that go see the fireworks drive to get to the fireworks. So are they going to worry about whether they drive to the school versus driving to Ivy? I don't know. So is the tradition shooting the fireworks that we're trying to preserve, or is the tradition that we're trying to preserve letting the folks in those 1,054 homes watch it from their house? Because eventually that's gone anyway. So that's where we're at. We've met as a committee. Chambers had representatives there, Parks and Rec, police. You know, we've had folks there discussing it, putting a plan together to come and present, make the recommendation for that. And so that's where we're at. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have. Can go back to any slides if you have any as well.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. What caused it to come about in the first place? Is this just something where we have a whole lot of people in the community that was complaining about where it currently being held? Or is this just something that the town just took on itself to investigate and do some analysis on?
A little bit of both. We've had folks more recently telling us they can't see all of them. They can hear them, but they can't see them. And the ones they hear but they can't see are the 3-inch and the 4-inch shells. And then our vendors kind of telling us, hey, they're not being able to see these. Vendor's fine. He'll keep doing it. But he's been telling us you really need to look at another location, because you need a bigger shell so that you can have a better show. And I'm not going to do a bigger shell. He's the only one. The one we use currently is the only one that will do a 5-inch that we're familiar with. Like I said, the older vendor only did 3-inch and 4-inch, and it was not good.
Well, I'm more concerned about what the people say, not what the vendor says
about these situations.
I understand that, but if you can't find a vendor to do fireworks, you're not going to have a show. So then the question is, do you want a show or do you not want a show? I mean, that's what it's going to boil down to if we stay over here.
But we're not at that point yet.
You're not at that point yet. I don't know. You can do them this year, maybe next year, but it's going to be, you're going to have to move them. I mean, and that's what the vendor's telling us. We looked at this 2 years ago because of what we were, what we're seeing. We know, and the fact of going in and cutting the trees and cutting the canopies, if we owned all the trees, that would be great. We could do that. And if it was just a few trees. I mean, great instance is I used to be able to watch them behind Mustin and Crutchfields. You can't see them from there anymore. So, it's just a matter of if you want to do a show where some of the people only see part of the show, that's fine. We can do that. But that's basically what we're doing now.
Curtis, can you sort of explain to me this concept of fallout zones? If my car is parked within the circle of the fallout zones you've delineated on your chart, what am I likely to experience with the larger shell? What's going to happen that's bad, if at all?
If you're within the fallout zone, whether it's a larger shell or whatever, if it's a 3-inch shell and you're within that fallout zone, it's what the fallout zone is the perimeter of where the shells are likely to fall. They go out, depending on the shell, each shell has a certain distance of the fallout. And I think it's 70 feet per inch of shell or whatever it might be. Those shells go up, and when you hear the boom is when the rest of the shell goes up. It's when the fireworks come out. Those things, I mean, they have to fall. What goes up is coming down. And they fall, and it's the big pieces of cardboard that contained the shell and the charge. If they fall hot, they're going to burn something up. There's been some of them fall hot that have started a fire currently. If they fall on your car, mainly it's probably not going to be hot enough to burn it, but it'd be hard enough to dent it. That's why we don't allow anyone to park in the fallout zone. As close as you can park is probably the Sutton Brothers Plumbing right there at the circle. Some folks park at the fire department, obviously the town employees and the fire employees, but that's what the fallout zone is. The main concern is one of those shells falling out that didn't fully discharge, still hot, set something on fire. And that's the concern of the vendors. That's why the vendors will not use larger shells and expand that fallout zone. A larger shell where we currently set them off, 8-inch shell is going to encompass most of Hitchcock lumber. They're not going to do that because they don't want to run the risk of a hot shell falling at Hitchcock lumber and setting it on fire. It's going to pick up down New Street, Orr Street. Got a couple of older churches in the area that it picks up the houses across on Nelson Street. 8-inch, 5-inch shells right now, their perimeter is about Bodenhammer Street. So they, if the wind's blowing, they'll blow, the fallout will blow all the way over into the Raider Field. So that's their concern. And, the vendors are the one that drive the boat. If you can't get anybody to set them off, you can't have a fireworks show.
Curtis, what's the cost of this fireworks show?
I think it's about $18,000. Is that right, Ernie?
And for $18,000, you can't find people to come shoot off the fireworks. Is that what you're telling me?
We've got a guy that comes. What I'm telling you is the ones we've had before for $18,000 would only shoot 3 and 4-inch shells, which if we do a show that's only 3-inch and 4-inch shells, half the people's not going to see it. This guy comes in and will do 5-inch, but he's the only one that will do 5-inch.
Right. I understand that. The sentiment that I've received here since this came out in the paper has been overwhelming. And it's overwhelming to leave it like it is, or to try to figure out something to make it happen closer to town. You point out some really nice things, like you can do food trucks and put music and all that kind of stuff and make kind of a festival out of that. Well, we had that for 50 or 60 years in Kernersville. We called it the 4th of July celebration until them guys got so old and the spring folly took it over and they quit doing the 4th of July. Everybody here remembers the 4th of July celebration. It's a big deal. And it wasn't a problem then, parking cars or anything else. So far as all of that goes, again, I'm with the people to leave it where it's at and figure out what's going on. Your presentation tonight has been impressive. I got to tell you, you did your homework. But this is the first time I've seen all of this. And if the problem is, as you explained, which the fallout and these other things, well, I'd like to be given that raw data, have time to look at it, cipher on it, and figure out where we're going to go with it. Instead of just being handed, here it is, take it or leave it. You know, if y'all have had meetings and stuff, I'd like to sit in on a bunch of them, you know, because people are raising Cain about this. I've got more response to this than anything that I've done since I've been on the board.
Yeah, and I agree. I've seen that. I would be willing to venture. Most of the folks are the ones that live in those 1,054 homes around. I can tell you that we've looked at other locations. Where we do it from, or where we're proposing, there's nowhere else close to where we do it from that we can do it. I mean,
I appreciate you saying that. Yeah. I do.
There's nothing close.
But I want to look at it. I want to be satisfied that that's where we got to go.
Yeah.
I want some other people to put eyes on it and go, why can't we move it here, there? You know, I'm just looking at Google Earth here, and, you know, I can see lots of spots very close to where it's at right now where you could do it and it wouldn't fall out on anything. And use 5-inch shales. You know, we got a lot of room around there. We could go to the highest place in the county, which is over there next to that big old tall mountain that's right off of Manorwood there. You could go back in there and shoot them off and it wouldn't fall on anybody's house or anything else.
That's private property.
Well, I know, but again, you know, that's something that we could work out. Dear Hitachi has been a wonderful neighbor. And if we asked them if we could go shoot them off in their parking lot, I bet you they'd say yes. But again, the whole thing is, Curtis, like I said, you've done a wonderful job putting all this together. But I need time to do the same thing you did to come to the same conclusion. And I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but as much response as I've had for this, I can't go, yep, you're right, let's move it. I can't do that. And, you know, I don't know what you're asking us to do tonight. But I'm for letting us do our research, making all of this stuff available to us so we can kind of cipher on it and figure out what to do. Because you say we might have 2 years, right?
You can have this year. We're pretty certain of that. Yeah. You can still do the 5-inch and seal.
I got you. But I mean, having that thing somewhere downtown like that, that's what makes it what it is, you know. I mean, I know it's more trouble for the police and everybody else. I've talked to all the policemen. They're all going, man, let's move it. Well, I understand that. But sometimes tradition costs a little extra. And I don't know. I think the people of Kernersville may be willing to put up with that, but I don't know. But I just think the board's going to need time to look at this and figure out what recommendation and which direction we need to go in. That's where I'm at. And I welcome Joe or Bill or anybody else's comments on that.
I would, and you did your homework. That was a fantastic presentation. But I would propose leaving them here this year and giving us time to think about it and review because it's the first time I've seen it too. But I've gotten almost as much response about this as people campaigning for a Cracker Barrel in Kernersville. And that was a lot of people. I always kidded other board members. I said people would rather have a Cracker Barrel than a new hospital. And it was all at the same time. Everybody wanted a Cracker Barrel, and nobody wanted the hospital. I just think
Just
it's,
to interrupt you there, I think about 5,000 people sent in a card in favor of the hospital, but I do agree with you. There was a lot of campaigning for Cracker Barrel as
I'm
well.
being facetious. However, I think of all the and I've gotten a lot of calls about this, not one has been in favor of moving it from downtown, and perhaps it's because they haven't seen your presentation either, and they don't know the facts. And it's sentimental, and I'm sentimental, and I think we ought to leave them here at least this year, and not just jump the gun on it before everybody is aware of the reality of the thing. So I don't know whether you wanted to, I know you got to decide soon.
I mean, we're good to go wherever. I mean, obviously we have the plan to do them where they're at. We've already got that plan in place. We have the plan to move them to Ivy. I mean, we're good either way. It's simply that we know ultimately where it's going to end up, whether it be Ivy or whether, like Alderman Barrow said, if we can find a private property owner close by that will assume the liability and let them do it on their property, which may be able to. Never know. But ultimately, we know it's going to have to be moved, but we're good to go either location. Doesn't matter to us. Board says keep them where they are. We'll keep them where they are and go with that plan. Board says move them. We'll move them and go with that plan. I mean,
You want to vote on that tonight?
If y'all would like to vote on it, that's
Well,
because otherwise, unless the board tells us no, we're probably going to move forward. We're going to Ivy.
Before anyone makes a motion, there is a citizen who signed up to speak on this item.
Oh, okay.
Ms. Tucker?
Hello, I'm Beth Tucker. I reside at 7255 Watkins Ford Road, Kernersville. But I do own the cutest house in Kernersville at 549 Dobson Street, which is just north of the Fallout area, which is right at the circle across from the graveyard. I bought that house knowing that it was going to be close to the fireworks detonation area. The sentimental part of me wants it to remain in Kernersville. The practical part of me wants it to be moved where it's going to be safer, where it's going to be encompassing more people in attendance. But also we have to realize that there might be some folks that live in our neighborhoods close in that might not can travel out at all. They might be elderly, they might be housebound, that type of thing. I am extending an open invitation to all the aldermen to attend my front yard at 549 Dobson Street when the fireworks are going on. And in all honesty, you can't see some of them because of the tree canopies. But it is an open invitation to the Board of Aldermen and anyone who is in attendance here that would like to camp out on the front yard and see firsthand from a resident point of view exactly what is available to the public. Any questions, you can contact me. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. All right, are there more comments?
I got one more. I
Go
was
ahead.
raised on Vernon Street, about, I don't know, 150 feet from where they shoot these things off. And I saw it every year that they've done it. So are trees getting away? Sure. If you're standing under a tree, you can't see the sky. But I mean, you just have to get in a spot where you can see. You can go to Ivy and find a tree to stand under and not see it. The thing is, it's the tradition, and there's more than one way to skin a cat. I would like a little chance on skinning that cat another way. That's what I'm looking at, and we may well have to move it, but I think we owe it to the people of Kernersville that love this tradition for us to fully research it and come up with an informed decision.
Chris Thompson, do you want to weigh in on this?
I would. Thank you very much, Mayor Morgan. And I cannot disagree with any of my fellow aldermen that have spoken at this point. I feel like it's inevitable that something's going to have to change. And I say that because I know that my first house in Kernersville, I could see the fireworks, and we had family over for 5 years, and that's what we did. We watched the fireworks. As I moved around Kernersville, I noticed that there were several places as I lived close to downtown, I couldn't see the fireworks, and I can't see them now, which I know why, but traditions are hard to stop or change. And I know this is a very touchy subject for a lot of people, and I too have gotten a lot of calls on this as well. But I think it's inevitable that due to safety and saving money for the citizens, that something's got to be done. But I agree with Alderman Barrow and several others that we need to look into this fully and make sure that we're making the right decision before moving forward. And I would hate to see us try to pull this out of play, especially since we're 2 months from 4th of July. But I think we need to do our due diligence and make sure we're making the right decision for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Apple?
I do have just a couple more things I'd like to just say. Curtis, I want to echo what was said about the information that you presented to us tonight. You answered most, if not all, of the questions that I've had, and most, if not all, of the questions that I've received as well in phone calls and emails. So I thank you for that. I would hope that between now and the time we have to make a decision about next year, maybe we could encourage the local media to do a little feature about the pros and cons and try to get that information out to people. Because I think a lot of folks, even if it's an emotional, traditional decision, a lot of folks can understand, I think, armed with the facts. I'm not among those who get elected to office and feel that all of a sudden the electorate is stupid. That just doesn't happen. After all, they were smart enough to elect us. I don't think we can, argue that. But I think if we can get those facts out and do that, I do think the move is inevitable to move it somewhere. But the case, I think, probably needs to be made to folks. And this is one of those decisions where when I vote, as we said when we campaigned, we want to be responsive to what the people here want. And it's one that I will probably have to move in that direction as well for this year. But I think we'll do our homework together between now and next year and be ready to make a timely decision that addresses every factor that we've got to address. But thank you for laying it before us like you have.
Mr. Gorham, do you have additional comments?
Yes. In our decision-making process as we go forward, we'd like to just bring to the attention that I think when we start thinking about what is in the good interest of all the people of Kernersville, that, location is a very important aspect of what we're trying to decide in regards to the fireworks, and being centrally located so that people around the city or town of Kernersville don't have to make exorbitant moves in order to go to the fireworks, especially the folks in the northern part of town. If they had to go all the way down to Redmond, that's a long travel for those folks up there. And so I would like to make sure that we give consideration to the folks up in the northern part of town.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Penix, did you have a motion?
Yes, ma'am. I would like to make a motion that we study this more thoroughly and leave the fireworks where they've always been for this coming year, and take the coming year before next July, hopefully more than 2 months before next July, and if research it thoroughly, and if we do make a decision, we make it out of necessity after studying it fully.
Okay, so your motion is to keep them in the current location for the current year?
Yes.
I'd second.
All right. Any further comments?
I just want to, Mayor, make one more comment. Is it not wonderful, though, that we've got people in the town who care enough to let us know how they're feeling about it? I mean, a lot of people could be sitting on their hands and just say, could fuss about whatever we do, or be happy about whatever we do. But I really appreciate, and I know that everybody up here does, appreciates the fact that our folks care enough about our town to let their aldermen know what their thinking is on any item. So thank you for that.
Okay, so if there's no further comments, we'll have a vote. It'll be a roll call vote. So if you could answer if you're in favor of it, say in favor, otherwise opposed. And the motion is the motion that Mr. Penix made and Mr. Barrow second. Mr. Barrow, what is your vote? In favor, Mr. Apple? In favor, Mr. Gorham? In favor, Mr. Penix?
In favor.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson?
In favor, thank you.
Thank you. All right, the motion is unanimous to keep the fireworks at the current location for this year. All right, moving on to item D, consideration of a resolution to the Ncdot in support of an extension of Piedmont Commerce Drive. Mr. Swisher? Ms. Garner?
Madam Mayor, at the last meeting, the alderman approved a contract with North Point and also with DOT about a locally administered project. DOT would like a resolution of support to go with those official documents that have already been signed. So this is the same project, $650,000 from DOT in pass-through money to North Point for the extension of Piedmont Commerce Drive.
Okay, everyone's had a chance to look at that, I believe. Do you have any questions or do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay, a motion by Mr. Thompson to approve.
Second.
Second by Mr. Gorham. Mr. Barrow, how do you vote? In favor, Mr. Apple?
I vote in favor.
In favor? Mr. Gorham?
I vote in favor.
In favor, thank you. Mr. Penix?
In favor.
In favor, Mr. Thompson?
In favor, thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on then to item E, discussion and consideration of a special event permit request from the Sister City Association. Is Gates or Ernie here to explain it?
No, I can cover it. Ernie
Okay,
can
Mr. Swisher.
answer any questions you might have. You have in your packet the special permit form. This is a request to have an event. Sister City's having it in the Harmon Park on May the 13th from 6 to 9:30 or 6:30 to 9:30. They will have beer and wine in part of that area. This is one of the new things that the board approved last year was to allow beer and wine at events on certain town-owned property and certain town-owned right-of-ways. So the board approved one for Colonelsville Brewery to take place at the end of May. This is the first one that has been before you to take place in the park. This will go through the same process. Usually the way it works is this permit goes to a committee. The committee recommends approval of it if they've got everything together, and then it comes to the board. But it's a new process. Kind of the time frames are getting crunched. So that's why you were hearing it first. Do the same process that we did with KBC. If the board approves the permit, then it will go back to the committee. They'll have to have everything in line to go to the committee. And if it is, then the committee will let them go forward with that. If they don't have everything in order before the event, then the event won't take place. But we don't anticipate any issues with it. They've done events before, so it's a matter of just getting the ABC permits and so forth. Ernie's here. Ernie's with the Sister City. He can kind of give you some information about the event itself.
So, representing Sister City Association, it's.
Ernie, if you can make sure about your microphone so everyone can hear.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So, representing Sister City Association as his own nonprofit group, separate from the town, we're partnering with Parks and Rec, and going after a temporary ABC permit to pour and serve beer and wine. Part of that application, as Chris alluded to, is to get the permit first and then to join that with their ABC permit application. It has to be in 14 days prior to, with this event taking place on the 13th of May. Time is tight, which is why it's before you today. But check the ABC board. We're in line with everything. We have additional liability insurance for serving alcohol with our insurance agent. We'll have the insurance with the town co-insured, and everything seems to be in line with everything with the application. So that's why it's presented to you tonight, so we can get that, everything in line and get the ABC permit. If I don't have any questions, I'll answer them.
Okay, are there any questions? Do I have a motion?
So moved. We adopt that.
Okay, a motion to approve by Mr. Gorham. Do I have a second?
I second. Okay, I'm sorry, I defer.
Got a second by Alderman Apple. All right, this is a roll call vote. Mr. Barrow, how do you vote?
In favor of the motion.
Thank you. Mr. Apple? Thank you. Mr. Gorham? Thank you. Mr. Penix?
In favor?
Thank you. Mr. Thompson?
In favor, thank you.
Thank you. All right, item E, or we're to F. Item F is consideration of acceptance of a grant for the construction of infrastructure and purchase of capital equipment. Mr. Swisher?
Madam Mayor and Board, this is the, excuse me, the grant that was discussed last month. This is the last grant that we have from the state that we had to decide what the scope of work will be. It's $400,000. You can send the memo. $200,000 is for paving. $100,000 is for the police department range building. We've had to change this up a little bit, and I'll explain it. $55,000 is for the employee wellness center, and $45,000 is to purchase 2 stainless steel salt spreaders. Those 2 items are already in the budget. They've already been allocated. So it's what we will do is we will pay for those 2 items using the grant money. The money that's in the budget for those 2 items will then be transferred to the fire department for the restoration of the old fire truck. So that was originally what the board proposed, was $100,000 for the fire truck. That was not an allowable expenditure under the grant. The equipment is, so we'll just take the money that's there for the equipment and use it for the fire truck. And you will see that in a future budget amendment.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I'd make a motion, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I've got a motion to approve from Alderman Barrow. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Alderman Thompson. Mr. Barrow, what's your vote?
I'm in favor.
In favor, Mr. Apple?
I'm in favor.
Thank you. Mr. Gorham?
In favor.
Thank you. Mr. Penix?
In favor?
Thank you. Mr. Thompson?
In favor.
Thank you. It's unanimous. All right, item G is discussion and consideration of a resolution declaring property surplus and authorizing disposal.
Madam Mayor and Board, the resolution is asking the board to declare a piece of property surplus that we have. We currently have a fire safe here that we remodeled some back in HR, and it was back in a room that we're now using for part of HR, and we really don't need the fire safe, and we really don't have anywhere to put it, and we really don't have the combination to it. So it doesn't do us a whole lot of good. So we found someone that wants it, and you know, hey, if they want it, we'll take it to them and give it to them if the board's okay with that. So the town of Stokesdale has asked if we get rid of it, if they can have it. And works for me if the board's okay with it. So we're recommending that the board declare that surplus and we send it over to Stokesdale.
All right, do I have a motion to approve this?
I have a question. Do they have to move it?
Well,
We can probably handle it.
initially that was kind of part of the deal, but we already have it on the furniture dolly, I think, and it's probably more trouble for us to take it off and then help them load it on another one. I think we can probably just push it on our truck and take it over, but you know, if otherwise they may end up getting to move it, but I think we've got it to where it's probably easily moved.
Madam Mayor, I'd move that we proceed with that.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Apple. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Gorham. All those, well, let's do a roll call vote. Mr. Barrow?
I'd be in favor of the motion of moving that thing to Stokesdale.
Thank you. Mr. Apple?
I will as well.
Thank you. Mr. Gorham?
I'm in favor of it as well.
Thank you. Mr. Penix?
In favor?
Thank you. Mr. Thompson?
In favor, as long as we got everything out of it.
Thank you.
We've still got a few gold bars in there, but we're moving them out tomorrow.
That's what I was worried about.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. We have item 2A, which is the approval of minutes for the March 30th meeting. 2B, which is approval of minutes for the April 5th meeting. Item C, which is consideration of a resolution declaring May as Historic Preservation Month. And if you note on the agenda for next week, that would be the presentation of the resolution declaring May as Historic Preservation Month. A resolution is voted on by the entire board, whereas a proclamation is issued by the mayor. Item D is consideration of a temporary street closure for Declan's Dash 5K run. As you may be aware, Declan Donahue Foundation partnered with the town of Kernersville to build the playground at Ivy Redmond Park and also at Harmon Park, and has built playgrounds in Greensboro and other locations. Item E is consideration of a temporary street closure for the concert in the park, and that's related to the item we already considered this evening. F is for Scythe County tax refunds, and that is all that's on the agenda, the consent agenda. So if you'd like to pull a matter out and discuss it separately, we can do that. Otherwise, the consent agenda can be voted on as a group. Is there any citizen in attendance who would like to see any item removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, is there any staff or elected official who'd like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Mr. Thompson? Is there anything
I'd motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Thompson. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second by Mr. Gorham. Mr. Barrow, how do you vote?
I'd be in favor.
Thank you, Mr. Apple.
In favor.
Thank you, Mr. Gorham.
In favor.
Thank you, Mr. Penix.
In favor.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
In favor, thank you.
Thank you. All right. We are now to the briefing on the May 4th regular meeting agenda. Before we proceed, would everybody like to take a brief recess? All right, we'll take a brief recess. Thank you. It is a public hearing, an annexation by Food Lion. And Ms. Gardner, if you could cover that.
Madam Mayor, before I go through the cases, there are two cases that require attention and consideration by the Board of Aldermen. Would you like me to proceed with those items or continue with Food Lion?
Let's do those at the end.
Okay. The first hearing is a voluntary annexation by Food Lion. This was a condition of their rezoning for their new property out on North Main Street at County Line Road.
Okay, are there any questions? Okay, then items B, C, and D are related, relating to the Atkins Farm annexation, a change in the development plan, and the site plan and zoning case for K798.
The first hearing is on the annexation. The annexation is required first because the area is not currently within our town limits or our extraterritorial jurisdiction, or ETJ. So the annexation would be required in order to bring it into the town and allow the board to vote on decisions related to the land use. So the annexation would come first, followed by the development plan. There is a designation for it in the county land use plan, and we use similar terminology for consistency, but we then would have to adopt a Kernersville development plan designation for it if it were to become part of the town of Kernersville. And then that allows you to hear the rezoning and consider whether the rezoning is consistent with the land use plan. So that's why the annexation comes first, the KDP designation comes second, and the rezoning comes last. Once it's in our jurisdiction, then the actual development request could be considered. This was heard at the April Planning Board meeting. The Kernersville Development Plan was recommended for approval by the Planning Board with an 8-to-1 vote, and the rezoning was recommended for approval with 2 additional conditions by the planning board with a 7-2 vote.
Okay, are there any questions? And I hope that everybody received an email and information that was delivered to the town clerk about this case from some of the residents of the area. Okay, all right. And then there will be opportunities for public comment the night of the public hearing, which would be this upcoming meeting. And it is a legislative process, so you're welcome to email, call, write letters to any of myself and any of the aldermen about this case. We've got an overwhelming amount of public input recently, so it may be taking a little longer to get back to you, but we appreciate all the comments and input on every case we've heard and are going to hear. Okay, items E and F are related cases again for properties located at 900 West Mountain Street. Ms. Garner?
Item E is an amendment, a proposed amendment to the Kernersville Development Plan for the property at 900 West Mountain Street. This received a recommendation of approval by the planning board with a 9-0 vote. Its associated rezoning, item F, is also receiving a recommendation for approval by the planning board with a 9-0 vote. This is an item that also needs a special intensive development allocation, or a CEDA. And so if the board would consider voting to add this item to the agenda to go along with the rezoning, please.
Okay, and as you recall, a CEDA relates to stormwater and stormwater usage. Can you briefly explain the CEDA permit?
The CEDA allows a developer to cover slightly more impervious area. So it is based on weighted criteria that are outlined in our ordinance. And so we'll have information on how he's met those criteria for your consideration.
Okay, and what agenda item would that be added as?
I think previously the board has added them in public sessions since they're not public hearings.
All right, so on this agenda, it would be added as item F. Do I have a motion to add as item F a CEDA allocation for this project to the agenda? So it'd be consideration of CEDA.
I'd so move, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I've got a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Apple. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Second by Mr. Gorham. This is a roll call vote. Mr. Barrow?
I'd be in favor of the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Apple.
In favor.
Thank you, Mr. Gorham.
In favor.
Thank you, Mr. Penix.
In favor.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
In favor. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, item G is a rezoning related to Vince Townsend, agent for Shenandoah Ridge Partners, for property on Hampton Plaza Drive, zoning docket K547A5.
This is a proposal for a rezoning in the Stafford Center. This is an amendment number 5 to their original conditions for this specific proposed uses as requested on the agenda. Planning board heard this at the April meeting and recommended approval with a 6-3 vote. The board and staff have received a request from continuance from an adjacent property owner and their legal counsel. And I believe, Mayor, you have spoken to the applicant tonight about his wishes.
Yes, I spoke to the applicant at the break, and he would like the case to be heard on May 4th as originally scheduled. Mr. Thomas is here representing understanding some of the surrounding neighbors, and they'd like to have the case continue to give the parties an opportunity to work out more of the details. Adam Smith, who I spoke to, indicates he is on his way here to the courtroom on this issue. So the board could consider this later. It could later tonight. It could wait and consider the continuance on May 4th. Or I think it can act on its own accord. Mr. Powell, is that a correct analysis of the choices before the board?
The board certainly has authority to make that decision.
So I would be inclined to wait till closer to the end of the meeting to to decide whether to continue it or not, and give Mr. Smith an opportunity to get here. Okay. All right. So if you could briefly tell us about, or is there any questions about this case other than what Ms. Garner has already told you? Okay, then we'll go on to item H, which is another public hearing on a rezoning, which is Brandon White. It's property on South Main Street, the address 1180 South Main Street. And the zoning docket is K524A1.
This is a request for an additional drive-through use at Harmon Creek Shopping Center. So when that property came through its original rezoning, the number of businesses or out parcels with drive-throughs was limited. There is a parcel that is proposed to be subdivided for an additional use, and so that would require amendment to that original condition of the rezoning. So the planning board heard that at their April meeting as well, and it received a recommendation of approval with a 9-0 vote.
That's all the zoning cases. Are there any questions on any of the public hearings? Okay, we are to item I, which we'll consider on Wednesday, but it's consideration of a resolution approving an installment financing contract and deed of trust security agreement and fixture filing. Mr. Swisher?
Madam Mayor and Board, this is two capital improvements that were approved in the budget for this current fiscal year: Civitan Park improvements and the police range buildings, $1.9 million total, financed over a 10-year period. The low bidder was Pinnacle Financial Partners at a rate of 2.56%. We're recommending that the board award that to them and the attached financing agreements.
Madam Mayor, before we take action on that, I probably need to get advice from counsel because my wife is an officer with Pinnacle Financial in this region, supervises this region. So I'm not so sure maybe, but what I ought to abstain from consideration and voting on that issue.
I don't know that you're going to receive any compensation as a direct result of this matter.
No, sir, I would not. I'll do whatever counsel advises me to do on that.
Well, you can certainly ask to be recused, but I don't. You can certainly ask to be recused, but I don't see the legal necessity because you're not going to gain any financial profit from any vote that you would make on this. Or not
Absolutely not. But
against.
I'll follow your advice then because it will not receive any financial remuneration
exactly
as a result of that. So thank you.
Thank you for identifying the issue, Mr. Apple. Okay. Also under consideration, item 2B will be discussion and consideration of a real property exchange with Providence Baptist Church. Mr. Swisher, do you have any information on that tonight?
Nothing other than, as the board is aware, Providence Baptist Church is the church right next to Station 41 and Civitan Park on Nelson Street. The church approached town staff some time ago about the possibility of either exchanging that property for some property the town owns or maybe purchasing the property outright. The town does have a parcel that's about 3 acres beside of Station 43 on West Mountain Street. And we have negotiated with Providence Baptist Church. They are in favor of the property exchange. I'll get into the details of it, of course, Tuesday night or Wednesday night or whatever night it is. Wednesday. Yeah. Get confused Tuesday and Wednesday, but Wednesday night. And I'll have a site plan, a rough site plan. I know you all have received some questions from the neighbors in Trillium. We'll have answers to those questions as well for the meeting on Wednesday night, and have a site plan that kind of shows what they're looking at doing there on that property.
Would it be possible to have some of that information uploaded as an agenda item prior to the meeting in light of Mr. Bear's concerns about enough time to consider different options?
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely have the site plan loaded up. I received it today. The answers to the questions, I don't know that we can have them all loaded up before, probably Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday morning, but we can get them online and answer those. But primarily it's what I've discussed with each of you, or all of you as a group in closed session. I think I would probably answer most of their questions that they had. I haven't looked at them. I've not had time today to look at the latest emails they sent, but we will try to get all of those answered and online before Wednesday night.
Okay, does anyone have any questions? All right, also on the agenda for Wednesday is consideration of an ordinance for Budget Amendment 7. Mr. Swisher?
Budget Amendment 7, we've got some general fund expenditures. We've had an increase in the construction costs for the police department range building facility. It's went up about $120,000, $30,000, maybe $150,000 more than what was budgeted. But we should be able to cover most of that, especially with the $100,000 grant going toward it. We have the expenditures for the fire truck in there, and then also the expenditures in the street department for the paving that was approved in the budget. So all of those are really items that were approved because of the grant that the board just voted on just a while ago. So the revenues, we show that $400,000 in revenue from the grant, and what it leaves us is $50,000 from the fund balance to be appropriated out.
All right. The next items would be D and E. The first is construction of a contract award for construction of improvements at Civitan Park. The second is a contract award for the construction of improvements at the police department range facility. If you could cover those items, Mr. Swisher.
The contract award for the construction of improvements at Civitan Park, we have not yet came to an agreement on that contract, the language in the contract. We're still working through that. Hope to have it to the board by Wednesday night. And the range building, we took bids on that. We only had 3 bidders on that project. The low bidder was Colt Simmons Construction, and we are recommending the board approve Colt Simmons as a contractor on that building.
Okay, are there any questions about anything on the May 4th agenda upcoming? Okay, I don't think Mr. Adam Smith has arrived yet, but Mr. Thomas, do you want to be heard about the request for the continuance?
The continuance, or Madam Mayor, Raymond D. Thomas, 116 South Cherry Street, Kernersville. Basically that I've just been retained as counsel, need some time to review this situation, have looked at it. I have actually been to the site and other surrounding area. You just need time to see whether or not a discussion with the petitioner, insofar as my clients are concerned, we can find a common ground. We do not feel that the present, that the planning board considered, maybe doesn't fully reach the point that my client would. My client is Breezewood Mobile Home Park, who purchased this couple of 3 years ago from the Pope family. And there are about 100 residents in that park. And this facility backs up to it. And so we hope that we can come to some conclusion. And we just don't have, at this point, don't have the time to really do that. So that's primarily the reason.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Thomas. All right, Mr. Powell, what are the board's options to consider here?
Well, I think the board can choose to grant the motion to continue.
Even though we really haven't heard from Mr. Smith. I attempted to call him. I sent him an email earlier today that included Mr. Thompson's letter, but he didn't have a lot of time. It was later in the day, so he didn't have a lot of time to see it. And I called him just now at the break, and he indicated he did not support the matter being continued. Ms. Garner emailed him the link to the meeting just as the break ended, but Mr. Smith indicated to me he was coming here, but he hasn't. So I've never really seen a situation where people can't agree to having more time to discuss something and work something out, especially a zoning case. But it is my understanding that it's the authority of the board to hear it when it's scheduled, have the public hearing, and they could continue it to a later date, or continue it tonight to a different date.
Well, you can go on and do that. That would be permissible.
All right, so given the range of options you have, what would you like to do?
I'd make a motion to continue it to the next monthly meeting on a Tuesday. Give them a month to work things out. They've gone to the trouble to hire an attorney to represent their interests who's trying to work it out. And I think it'd be to benefit everybody. It's just 30 days.
Okay, and I think that is June 7th. Is that correct, Mr.
The next regular meeting that includes a briefing is June 1st. The next regular meeting, similar to the one that would be next week, would be June 7th.
That's what Mr. Bear is indicating.
Right. My question, though, is, and would be perhaps for Mr. Powell, because the public hearing has been advertised for May 4th, do we need to wait until the May 4th meeting for the board to vote to continue the public hearing?
You can go on and hold a public hearing and then make your vote at a later time. Hold the public hearing and then vote at that time whether or not to vote on the matter.
Can we not decide?
Mr. Twister and I have conferred, and the proper time to vote was going to be on May 4th. You can vote to continue at that time.
Could we not decide tonight, because there's some folks potentially from out of town that will be heard? Can we not decide tonight to reset it for the June 7 meeting in its entirety?
With it already being advertised for May the 4th, it's like Mr. Hooker said, I think with it being advertised, and I'll defer to Catherine and Keith on it, I think if you continue, you have to do it at the meeting it was advertised to be heard.
Where they're all here.
Okay.
They're not here tonight.
I believe that is correct. If you do it tonight, for one, you would have to re-advertise the public hearing since you changed the date prior to the public hearing. And then you would also run the risk of the petitioner claiming that they did not get a fair hearing because they had been told it was May 4th and then it was changed without them and not at the May 4th meeting.
So you have to do it May the 4th. You have two options, like Mr. Powell said. You can have the public hearing. You can move forward and have the public hearing on May the 4th, hear from those in favor and those against, and then continue until June the 7th, the decision on it, and then come back on June or whenever. You can come back whenever and have the vote on it. Or you can, at
May the 4th. You can decide to continue the whole case until another time, but you have to do it at the May the 4th meeting, since it's already been advertised. The advertisement and the setting of the date occurred before we had any request.
I think it occurred before council was retained as
Yes.
well. So, well, I'm going to, whether we're at a point to discuss or not.
Go ahead.
I'm inclined, I mean, maybe I'm calling too much on my experience in court cases, but I'm inclined, we certainly have to protect the interest of the petitioner, which I think we would be doing by having a public hearing. Ed, unless you disagree with me, could we at the May 4th meeting, could we hear the proponents and then continue the hearing with respect to the opponents to the June 7th meeting?
I think you're going to need to hear both sides at the same time, because public hearing is advertised for a specific date.
So we need to continue it. If we're going to do it, we need to do the whole thing at the May 4th meeting. I mean, continue it at the May 4th.
You can choose to hear it and determine what the board has concerns about at a later meeting. But if you open the public hearing up and hear any of it, you hear from both sides of it. You would basically go through the whole case with the exception of making a motion and voting. Correct. If you open it up. If you don't open it up, then you can just hear from Ms. Garner and then open it up at the next meeting. But even then, I think the advice would be if you hear from Ms. Garner, you hear from those in favor and those opposed. But you can't hear from one side and not hear from the other. Correct. That would be totally unfair otherwise.
Understand. My practical question is, what do we tell Mr. Thomas on behalf of his clients tonight about, do they need to be here May 4? Ed? The public hearing, you can determine that public hearing is going to be held on May 4. And then at that time, the board will make a decision going forward.
Mr. Thomas, if I could, you know more about this than everybody in this room put together. Okay? What can we do here? What's your understanding?
Oh, Mr. Thompson, if you could speak from the microphone, please. And Mr. Powell, if you could make sure the microphone is turned on for him. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
If I'm straight with the board, I've got to say that what your attorney is telling you is correct. It's been advertised. So at that point, and you will note in my letter that I requested it, I talked about May 4th. That's when it's advertised. That's when you would first consider it. Whether you have the hearing, don't continue it, do continue it, or whatever you want to decide to do. But it has to open up. The hearing has to be called at that time. And that's my understanding of the law. I'd love for you to do it tonight, but I think you might have a problem.
I might understand that you and Mr. Smith could consent to anything though, correct?
Pardon?
You and Mr. Smith, could y'all consent to something?
Yeah, we can consent. The part of the problem is that timing people's time and getting together and having a discussion about our position. It's my understanding that only one other party, according to the minutes of the planning board, has been only one other, or the petitioner. Actually, the petitioner on paper is not the real party in interest, but that's the person that we need to talk to and have a conversation with. And my understanding is that it has not occurred.
Okay, so what we're going to
But
do?
I would say that you really can't do anything until the May 4th hearing. And then you can continue to do whatever you deem
So everybody,
appropriate.
everybody prepare to be here to do their thing, and then we'll consider your motion to continue. Is that correct? Good deal. I understand.
Thank you.
Okay, so no action tonight.
No action tonight.
Okay. All right, is there anything else before the board other than, the town manager's report? Mr. Swisher?
The only thing I have, Madam Mayor, is a request to move the June 1st meeting to May the 25th. That way it'll be one less meeting you have in June. It's the way the month falls, so it would really be kind of the way it normally is, but it'd be moving it up a week. I think that's the correct dates. Is that correct?
Well, that would be the correct date, but the deputy clerk and I will both be at a conference that week.
It's going to be hard to move it.
I think Keith was out of town when he asked all the department heads if that was a good change.
Yeah. So we probably can't move it, I guess.
Okay.
Scratch that request.
All right.
Yep, I do have one other thing.
Okay.
Chief Summers has an update for the board on the sweepstakes in
Okay.
town.
Just to bring everybody up to speed where we're at on the sweepstakes businesses here in town. You know, I came to you, I think we talked about it about a year and a half ago and started trying to shut those down here in town. A couple of cases were brought up that were loopholes, so to speak, that the sweepstakes challenged and said they were legal to operate. Those went before the North Carolina Supreme Court and were heard back in March. The Supreme Court came out with rulings saying they are in fact illegal on both those cases. And so April the 6th, we sent out another letter to those establishments, actually hand delivered it, signed by myself and District Attorney Jim O'Neill with the new case law after meeting with Ed Powell, and we gave them until Tuesday of this week to close, in which it appears most of them have closed. We are taking enforcement action on them still if they have their equipment in there and have a potential of operating. And we have taken enforcement action today on 2 of them. And we will look to continue taking that enforcement action as needed in the next week or 2.
Thank you for the update. Are there any questions?
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
I've not been in one of them places, okay? I've had it all described to me. But you're just in there playing on a computer that's hooked to the internet, right?
That's correct.
What's the difference between that and sitting in your living room and doing that?
From my understanding, they can operate, they're illegal either way. Okay. As long as you're gambling and receiving funds for whatever you're gambling. One of the establishments today was supposedly setting up so people could sit at home and do that. And I do not know how they were going to receive their funds for that. But in either way, it's still illegal.
Yeah.
But that was my understanding too. And I have not been in one either to see it operate. I've never played one. I don't understand it.
Yeah, it seems like an awful mess to me. Something that cannot be controlled.
It is. And what we're concerned about is the violence that surrounds the places. And that's what we are for the town and all the establishments that are open, the robberies. And we've had several shootings at locations here in town and in jurisdictions close by us.
Don't need that.
Mr. Penix?
How many places do we have in town?
We were up to 15. It dropped down to, I believe, 12. And right now, I don't know that there's any open. The two that we hit, or the two that we went to today to serve search warrants on, were both locked. There was some people in one establishment that were managing the establishment. There was nobody in there playing the games. And then the other establishment, there was nobody in it.
Yeah. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe that Adam Smith has just arrived. Mr. Swisher, if you could update him as to what he's missed.
The board discussed your case, and basically the way it works is they have to at least consider it on next Wednesday. They can't decide tonight whether or not to continue it. So next Wednesday, the case will be brought up, and at that point, the opposition can ask that it be continued, and you can come up and either agree with that or ask for it to be heard next week. The reason it has to be heard that part of it has to be heard next week is because it was advertised for that night. That's when the public hearing was advertised. So next Wednesday night, I was trying to think, your case is item, what is it, B? I was trying to find out which one you were on the agenda. No, you're not B, you're...
I think it's item G, Vince
1G.
Townsend.
Item G. So once we get to item G, the board will consider whether or not to hear it that night or whether to continue it. And I'm thinking probably you don't have to wait for item G. You can move it up. You can consider that as soon as you get to the public hearings. I believe you can do that. So you wouldn't have to sit and wait. You could ask for it to be heard whether or not to continue it as soon as the meeting opens up, if the board chooses. Now, if they choose to hear it Wednesday night, then I would advise that you hear it in the order that it is on the agenda, but you can make the determination whether or not to hear it first thing. I believe that's correct. Is that correct, Mr. Powell? The board, Wednesday night, they don't have to wait until it gets to him on the agenda. They can, first thing under public hearings, they can decide whether or not to hear his case. And then if they decide to hear it, they need to wait and hear it in the order it is on the agenda.
Mr.
Correct?
Smith, if you could have a seat, I'll recognize you in a moment. But if you could have a seat right now.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we are, Mr. Smith. One way or the other, they're going to at least open it up for discussion Wednesday night. And it will be determined whether or not to hear it Wednesday or whether to hear it at a later date, which is on any case is entirely up to the board. They can continue it in its entirety to another date. They can open it up and hear from Ms. Garner, hear from those in favor and from those opposed, and then make the decision at a later date, or they can hear it all and make a decision Wednesday night. So it's kind of where we are. That's where we stand right now. But right now, something on it will be heard next Wednesday. So they took no action tonight to continue.
We did receive the request to continue it to a specific date, but I wanted to be sure that you had seen the request and that that was a date that you were in town and available. So I'm glad you are here. Mr. Thomas was heard with the merits for his request to continue it, which is contained also in the letter that you, I believe, have gotten a copy of by email.
I've not heard any of this, nor have I got a letter. And I would have loved to have the opportunity to be here tonight to hear this.
Well, you have an opportunity right now because you sent me your phone number earlier today that I saw and that called you. So, and I couldn't talk to you for very long because this meeting was being called back. But you can't speak from where you are because the clerk can't pick it up in the minutes and no one watching on the stream can hear it. So I will recognize you at this point in time to say that if the board is going to consider moving this public hearing that is currently scheduled to May 4th, which they cannot decide tonight, we've had a request to move it. I'd like you to have an opportunity to say your piece about that. Is the microphone on?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It sounds like it is. First of all, I'm sorry for how I look. I came from a ball field and a 10-year-old's birthday party. I got a phone call. I had no clue about this. Yes, you did call me. I received an email at 5:22 to a business email that I use that I may not see after 5 o'clock on normal days. So I had no clue about anybody's. I've known some objections of my project, but I had no clue about anybody asking for an extension or anything. This is all new to me. This happened to me tonight when you called me. And I literally turned on my computer when we got home as he was blowing out his birthday candles. I turned on my computer and watched what happened. I got in my truck and drove here. So that's why I'm here.
I would like to note you did not tell me you were at a birthday party for a 10-year-old when I called you.
Well,
I'm glad that you've told us now, but continue.
I didn't think it was relevant, but when I walk in to half the people in here in suits and ties and I'm looking like this, that's why I put it out there. But that's where I was. But I just want you to know that another part of that is the importance of this for me, because I've been in Kernersville forever. I've looked at properties in Kernersville for the last year. I could not come to an agreement with the property owner that I'm at right now to buy the property. It is time for Pure Diesel not to rent anymore. I hate that the property that I found that was affordable and worked for me was bordering some residential properties. But I've offered what I'm thinking is going to come into $100,000 to $150,000 buffer yard and fence to accommodate those residential properties. So I feel like I've gave everything that I can give at this point to accommodate Mr. Bucksbaum and the mobile home park, trailer park, whatever you call it, and the residential properties, that at the same time, their front yard is engulfed by 2 hotels getting built. The mobile home park borders Crossroads Ford's body shop. Across the street from that is another business park, is a storage facility. To the right of it is also.
I think you're getting a little into the merits of the rezoning case.
Well, I don't
and
know
not
how I don't know how this
the
works.
time frames.
Madam Mayor,
Go
you're
ahead.
getting outside.
Yeah,
the
we're getting
parameters.
outside of. But in short, you would like to have the case heard
Absolutely.
May 4th. On May 4th, this board will decide whether it's going to hear the case or continue it, and it is the vote of this board.
Okay.
It's their authority to do so. But I appreciate you coming. I did call you because I didn't want you not to have had an opportunity to be, part of this decision.
I appreciate the phone call, but I'm just telling you, until the phone call, I knew nothing about this. Zero.
All right. Well, thank you, and I appreciate you coming, and appreciate the text to let me know you were on your way.
All right. Thank you.
All right. So, matters to be presented by the town attorney, I think is what we're on, unless there's anything else from the town manager. Okay. Mr. Powell?
Madam Mayor, we do have a need for a short closed session.
Okay. All right. Mr. Penix, have you got anything to present tonight? Mr. Gorham?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Apple? Mr. Barrow?
Yes, I've got 2 things.
Okay, go ahead.
Number one, I received a letter from a lady down in Wexford. Chief Summers, did you get that same letter? And I assume y'all are addressing that, correct? Good deal. That's the first thing I had. Thank you very much, Chief. The second thing is I just wanted to comment about the apparently very successful food cart weekend thing that Andy Kennedy had down there at the Brewer's Kettle. I drove through town twice, and the parking lots were full everywhere except at the newspaper, which had been roped off. But he's done a very good job down there with that, and everybody seemed to be well behaved and have a good time all day. I saw people walking up and down the streets all the way from the middle of town. all the way down there to the brewer's cattle. And free commerce works.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson, do you have anything?
No, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Okay. And just happy that most of the proms in the area seemed to have been good experiences for the students. I saw a lot of dressed up high school students taking photographs at Senior Gardens, at Kerner's Folly, and various places around town this month. So thank you to everyone who helped the Kernersville kids have safe and happy proms. And for the Winston-Salem, Forsyth County schools who are still in their prom season, I hope that the events all go well. With COVID concerns, everything has gotten kind of more spread out, bigger venues and greater time frames. So I've heard of the proms in the school system being anywhere from late March, outdoors, and a little chilly, to continuing on into May. So appreciate everybody's support of our students. And if there's nothing other than the closed session on the briefing agenda, we'll turn to that. We will need a motion to do that. And then the closed session will be just the members of the Board of Aldermen and our legal counsel. So we appreciate everyone who had come to attend this meeting. And we thank you for your patience and for your involvement. Do I have a motion to enter into closed session?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318 .11A3, I move that the board go into closed session to consult with an attorney employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body, which privilege is hereby acknowledged.
Okay, I have a motion by J.R. Gorham. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Apple. All those in favor, raise your right hand. It's unanimous.
Madam Mayor, that should be a roll call vote as well.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot Mr. Thompson. The hour is late. Mr. Thompson, how do you vote?
In favor, thank you.
Mr. Barrow?
In favor.
Thank you, Mr. Apple.
In favor.
Thank you, Mr. Gorham.
In favor.
Thank you, Mr. Penix.
In favor.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you for the procedural correction there, Mr. Hooker. All right, we are now in closed session. Back to the regular meeting of the Kernersville Board of Aldermen. We have one additional item for business in open session. We have made recommendations. The nominating committee has met and made some recommendations to the board as to appointments to boards and commissions. And I'd like a motion to add that list of recommended appointments to the consent agenda for the upcoming May meeting. Do I have I have a motion by Alderman Thompson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman J.R. Gorham. Mr. Barrow? Mr. Barrow's in favor. Mr. Apple's in favor. Mr. Gorham's in favor. Mr. Penix is in favor. Mr. Thompson?
In favor, thank you.
Mr. Thompson's in favor. All right, is there any further business before the board this evening? If not, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I've got a motion by Mr. Thompson, a second by Mr. Penix. Mr. Barrow, how do you vote?
I vote affirmative.
In favor.
In favor.
Mr. Apple is in the affirmative. Mr. Gorham's in favor. Mr. Penix is in favor. Mr. Thompson?
In favor, thank you.
Mr. Thompson's in favor. Thank you, and this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you for joining us.